Are you anxious about the day of the Lord? Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Persohn. You can reach me at pastor@mascot.church. Today, a wonderful topic along the lines of our two trains videos that we've done in the past. We're going to talk about the day of the Lord. And I think you're going to find this to be exciting. It's one or the beginning of a substantial number of videos we're going to be doing along these topics going forward. We're all going to follow the day of the Lord or the two trains kind of pattern that we've done in the past. Let me just review the two trains model. Now that video is in this series, but let's just do it here. So what we're doing is we're talking about the fact that, or we're using an illustration of the old and the new covenants together as two trains. One train began at the time of Moses with the giving of the law and ended at the fall of Jerusalem. Another train began at the outpouring of the Spirit after the death and the resurrection of Christ and continues on this day. Go back to my two trains video to get the picture, but let me just give you a quick shot at this before we hop into today's topic. What we're doing is we're trying to graphically represent this element of Scripture that we're seeing here, the Old Covenant period of time. The Old Testament, Old Covenant, Old Testament, pretty much interchangeable, and the time in the New Testament that begins and then we're into today. We're still in the New Covenant era, the New Testament era. We always will be. And the time that I've highlighted on the screen is the time from the crucifixion of Christ up until the fall of Jerusalem, that window. It's during this window of time, let me just give the years again, it's during this window of time from AD 30 to AD 70, the year 30 to the year 70, when the New Testament was written. All the books of the New Testament were written in that time window. Well, I believe that. There's a couple of videos that reference that. I think my two trains one does in the past. And the New Testament writers who we're familiar with, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, wrote in that period. The Apostle Paul lived in that period. Peter did. James did. So on. And we find only it's believed that John lived past the end of AD 70. Most of the others did not. Perhaps none of the disciples did, in any case, outside of John. So what we want to do is to continue along this way. Now, what happened at AD 70? Well, if you use the train motif, a great train wreck happened with the fall of Jerusalem. And that's why that last journey of the Old Covenant train ends with a very bad train wreck, an explosion that ends the Old Covenant era. And we'll be doing a lot more work on this in the future. Okay, so what we need to do is look at this concept of the day of the Lord. Because a lot of people today think the day of the Lord is coming yet, and that it's a lot to be feared, and they're not sure, is the day of the Lord the end of time, the end of all creation, and so on. So I'm going to lay the foundation today. And then as we continue the two trains methodology, we're going to use that model going forward. In videos to come, we will talk a lot about that and help you to understand this. But I think you're going to enjoy today. Well, I really enjoy putting this one together. It's a bit of a journey away from my regular topic because I want to do a little bit of deeper, clearer work on my regular topic. And I like to do one of these, something like this, once a month. So today is the lucky dip. So during this time period here, let me just review it, pop it up on the screen again. During this time period, beginning in the year 30, now I believe that the Lord was crucified in 30, and Jerusalem, of course, we know fell in 80. If you are one who wants to see the crucifixion in the year 31 or 32, 33, no problem to me, at least in terms of this study. I might put forward a case sometime for my personal opinion on the year of the birth and the crucifixion of Christ, which is held, I guess, by about a third of scholars, I suppose. I don't know. I'm certainly not alone in that. But that's really not critical for this discussion. But during this time window, from certainly after the resurrection of Christ up until a bit before the fall of Jerusalem, the phrase day of the Lord was used quite a bit about a future coming event. And it kind of shocks you when you read some of those passages. So let's go and have a look at the passages and see why people might be a bit alarmed or a bit concerned when they see Day of the Lord passages in Scripture. So let's go. Acts chapter 2, verse 20. All of my references are from the English Standard Version. If you like the King James, the New King James, or whatever, you'll find these are very, very close. Here we go. Acts 2:20, the sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the day of the Lord comes, the great and magnificent day. Now, some translations use great and terrible day or great and awful day. But it talks about the sun being turned to darkness and the moon to blood. Now, if you read those scriptures, you say, whoa, the day of the Lord, that day is coming. Like, oh, that hasn't happened yet. Oh, when did that happen? When did the sun turn dark and the moon red? And oh my! And I appreciate that can cause a bit of concern if you think about the day of the Lord as still coming, and you think about the day of the Lord as the destruction of all creation. Let's go and see a couple of other day of the Lord passages here. 1 Thessalonians chapter 5, 1-3. Now concerning the times and the seasons, brothers, you have no need to have anything written to you. This is the Apostle Paul writing. For you yourselves are aware that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. While people are saying there is peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them as labor pains come upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. Oh my! If I believed that the day of the Lord was the end of all creation and a future event, like many, many, many Christians do, I would be concerned. I'd be looking around saying, there'd be no escape from this. It'd be impossible to escape from the day of the Lord. And look at the language that they're using. The moment they say peace and security, well, you get this all the time whenever there's a change of government, in particularly in the United States, or a war that takes place or something. People crank this scripture up and say, look, peace and security is going to happen, and then the day of the Lord. Okay? Now, again, I'm not making fun of anyone, but I'm going to put you at ease with this over a few weeks to come when we do these studies. Okay, so let me just read this scripture again in case it's new to you, if you had to grab a piece of paper to write it down. Now, concerning the times and the seasons, brothers, you have no need to have anything written to you. For you yourselves are fully aware that the day of the Lord will come like a thief in the night. While people are saying there is peace and security, then sudden destruction will come upon them as labor pains upon a pregnant woman, and they will not escape. So you can sense the use of a pregnant woman labor pains. She has no way out. She has to deliver the baby. There's no getting rid of this, okay? You can't duck it. Now, later on in the epistle, the same letter to the next letter to the Thessalonians, Thessalonica was a church that Paul ministered to and at, and we find another reference to the day of the Lord. Let's look at that. Not to be quickly shaken in mind or alarmed, either by a spirit or a spoken word or a letter seeming to be from us, to the effect that the day of the Lord has come. Let me read that entirely without a pause here. Not to be quickly shaken in mind or alarmed, either by a spirit or a spoken word or a letter seeming to be from us, to the effect that the day of the Lord has come. So there were people at the time who were saying the day of the Lord had come and gone. And Paul said, no, that's not the point here. That's not correct. He demonstrated that he had authority to explain when the day of the Lord was to be, what it was to be like. And we're going to come back to this passage, by the way, and you're going to realize what Paul is saying. It's very liberating in the text that I just gave you, but it will require a look at the larger context rather than just cherry picking a verse. Now, Peter, later on, the Apostle Peter, this is in the New Testament period, writing not too far from the fall of Jerusalem and not too far from his own death. Peter died a martyr, writes in 2 Peter something about the day of the Lord. He says, but the day of the Lord will come like a thief, then the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the heavenly bodies will be burned up and dissolved, and the earth and the works that are done in it will be exposed. Whoa. That sounds to me like the end of all things. Now, if you read the New Testament and you look out and you'd say, well, this day of the Lord motif, this day of the Lord pattern talks about some event that will come at the hand of God that's going to destroy all creation, and there'll be nothing left after that, and it's obviously just about to happen. Look at the world that we live in, etc. If that's your worldview, you would have a reason to be a bit anxious about the day of the Lord. However, if you don't mind, I'm going to quote Yoda. Yoda? Yes. Yoda. A prophecy that misread could have been. A prophecy that misread could have been. Haha. It is possible that we have misread some of those texts. It's possible that we don't quite get the picture of the day of the Lord in its proper context and its proper understanding. Now, let me just drop something on you, drop a question on you. Do you think the concept or the idea of the day of the Lord was new to the audience, to the people? It was new to the people who had read those quotes or scriptures that we have just sent? That's a bit of a complicated way of asking the question. Let me try again. When the writers talk about the day of the Lord in the past, in the passages that I have just read, do you think the day of the Lord was a new concept? Do you think they were introducing a new idea? Something that people did not understand? Something that people thought, well, the day of the Lord, what is that? When? Where? Well, I don't know. Oh, we need to find out what this is. What will the day of the Lord be like? Well, the heavens will be destroyed, and the earth will be destroyed, and the sun will be turned, and this and all of that. Yes, yeah, right. Do you think that was a new concept? Well, obviously that's a loaded question, isn't it? I wouldn't ask the question like it if there wasn't something behind it. There have been in Scripture several days of the Lord. The day of the Lord idea or concept was not new to the readers at all. And it certainly should not be new to us if we'd read our Bibles from Genesis all the way to the beginning and paid a bit of attention, particularly looking at the prophets, Isaiah and Jeremiah and on. Because we see the phrase day of the Lord again and again and again. And there's no new concept being introduced here. Old Testament scriptures referring to the day of the Lord are quoted in the New Testament, and in the Old Testament we know how that phrase was being used. So the concept was not new to the readers. It was not new to the audience. Let me just go back. I just feel the need to kind of go back and have a look at this first passage in Acts and just reiterate that point to make it very clear here. The sun shall be turned to darkness, the moon to blood, before the day of the Lord comes, the great and magnificent day. The day of the Lord was understood to be and to mean something. The phrase was not, and what it meant to those readers and those hearers is something different than what it might mean to us because of our literal view of Scripture. We hop into Scripture from the 20th century, 21st century, and we say, right, let's use these eyes, let's use these goggles to interpret the passage, not realizing what the phrase might have meant. Okay, I should go on now, and I should make good on my statement that the phrase, the day of the Lord, had occurred prior in the Old Testament. Now, we're going to be spending a significant amount of time following the 2 trains model and looking at Day of the Lord language in upcoming videos in this series. I'm not sure how often I'm going to do it, at least once a month, but we want to pack as much material together, make it nice and tight. First of all, let me take you to an Old Testament passage that uses the words or the phrase Day of the Lord. This is one of those that we're going to study in depth. Now, what do I mean by an Old Testament passage? First of all, I mean that it was inspired by God in the Old Covenant period. Okay, you notice that I've marked that in blue prior to the time of the birth of Christ. I could actually have pushed that to Pentecost, but in earlier times, okay? And you're talking about several hundred years before the birth of Christ. This particular passage was given to the great prophet, or given by the great prophet Isaiah. This is from Isaiah chapter 13 and 1 in the English Standard Version. Let me read it carefully. Pay attention to the words. Please don't drift off. This is an important passage that will help us in our study. The oracle concerning Babylon, which Isaiah the son of Amoz saw. On a bare hill raise a signal, cry aloud to them, wave the hand for them to enter the gates of the nobles. I myself have commanded my consecrated ones, and have summoned my mighty men to execute my anger, my proudly exulting ones. The sound of a tumult is on the mountains as of a great multitude, the sound of an uproar of kingdoms of nations gathering together. The Lord of hosts is mustering a host for battle. They come from a distant land, from the end of the heavens. The Lord and the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. Wail, for the day of the Lord is near. As destruction from the Almighty it will come. Therefore all hands will be feeble, and every human heart will melt. They will be dismayed, pangs and agony will seize them. They will be in anguish like a woman in labor. They will look aghast at one another, their faces will be aflame. Behold, the day of the Lord comes, cruel, with wrath and fierce anger, to make the land a desolation, and to destroy its sinners from it. For the stars of the heavens and their constellations will not give their light, and the sun will be dark at its rising, and the moon will not shed its light. Well, that's a pretty heavy-duty passage. If you've read the scriptures, you've read many like them from the book of Isaiah all the way through to the book of Malachi, the prophets, many statements like it, some much stronger than this one. This passage talks about the day of the Lord. The language that we are hearing and reading in this particular passage from Isaiah 13 is not unlike what we've heard in the New Testament earlier on in my study. The sun and the moon being affected, the not giving their light, the stars changing, the woman in labor, the inescapable sense, the people's fear, and so on. Now you say, well, yeah, I guess that's the end of all creation. If you read that with those kind of the same eyes, the casual reader's eyes, you'd say, wow, this is the Old Testament talking about the end of all creation. However, if you read the passage beyond and you ask some questions about this one, which we will do on our next study, you'll realize this could not have been the end of all creation. How could this have been the end of all creation if God used the Medes and the Persians to bring about the destruction of Babylon, to whom this prophecy was addressed? Would that not have destroyed them as well? Oh, well, that's interesting. How can it be the end of all creation if the scriptures talk about things that will happen after this event that's continued to take, that after this event happens, which they do? Isaiah prophesies this destruction, then he prophesies beyond, and continues on from there. So how could he have meant that? Well, this is not the only passage in the Old Testament, by the way, that talks about the day of the Lord. There are several. When we start listing them, you'll say, well, I never realized there were so many passages that talk about God coming in judgment in the clouds, the day of the Lord, etc., in the past. Whoa. The Old Testament model for these is the template for interpreting the New Testament passages. When Peter or Paul or whoever in the New Testament talks about the day of the Lord, when Jesus uses similar language that we know is day of the Lord language, he's not introducing a new concept or a new idea. He's saying, you all have seen and understood from your history that the day of the Lord has occurred multiple times in the past. Well, all right. Okay, what's that mean? What's my time? Okay, I better wrap this up here. When the scripture talked about the day of the Lord in the Old Testament, and I'm going to demonstrate the day of the Lord in the New Testament, it did not mean the end of all creation. When the Bible refers to stars and the natural universe, particularly stars and the sun going dark or the moon changing its color or so on, it is referring to governmental authority or kingdoms falling. Well, how do I know that? You're going to be interested to find that out as we go forward. You can see all the way from Genesis, the way in the back, that God refers to leaders or kingdoms or whatever with heavenly cosmological language. You'd say, oh, well, this is the consistent use of the scriptures all the way through. Does the Bible talk about the stars in the heaven and the sun? And so, of course it does. But it also uses that kind of language figuratively to mean leaders or governments, etc. You say, well, why would it do that? Well, you do that too. Come on now. Don't demand so much from the scriptures unless you're prepared to change the way that you talk. For example, you have a heart in your body that you say, well, I can feel my pulse, right? But you also use the word heart to mean something completely different. I want to get to the heart of the matter. He approached this thing heartily. She has a lot of heart. We use that all the time. You're using the same word to mean different things. A casual reader might come away and say, well, yeah, what does that really mean? I don't know. Maybe somebody who translates English into another language years later would say, why is he using this? What's going on here? Until he finds out what's happening. There are other words that you use in a different way all the time. The word key. You have a key that opens your door, your car, whatever, but you also use the word key to refer to something that would help you understand. That's the key to the matter. You use the word table. You sit down and you say, let's eat at the dinner table. That's the most reasonable. But if you have something to talk about, you'll turn the noun table into a verb. Let's table the issue. Bam. You've done that too. So don't demand that the Bible treats language differently than you're prepared to treat it. Does that make sense? So the scriptures talk about and use the stars in the heavens and all of those things in prophecy many times to refer to fallen nations, to nations or kingdoms that will fall. And it's very consistent all the way through scripture. I think you do that too. If you don't, you might have heard the song, "You Are My Sunshine, My Only Sunshine." Now, come on now. That's not talking about the sun. That's talking about somebody that the singer was very fond of. And I'm sure you have heard people say, "Oh, when she left me, my whole universe exploded or fell in. My world fell in," right? You know what I'm talking about. Okay, I better not beat that one to death because we're on limited time. In order for this study to work and in order for us to understand the Day of the Lord passages, we're going to have to do some things. And let's see if I can get these points on the next screen here, and we'll fly them in one at a time. Things that I hope to do, and I will do more as these events, as we crack open this study. I'm going to have to demonstrate to you that there have been several days of the Lord in the past, and that those days of the Lord did not result in the end of all creation. I'll have to demonstrate that to you from Scripture. I'm going to have to demonstrate to you that the Day of the Lord concept or motif was understood by the New Testament audience to mean something that is not the end of all creation, to mean something different from what we do, but that they understood the motif. I'll have to demonstrate that to you clearly. I believe I can do that. I'm going to have to demonstrate to you, it's a bit like the first one, that Day of the Lord events in Scripture are not world-ending occurrences. And ultimately, that means that they would not be world-ending, that the Day of the Lord passages in the New Testament are not world-ending either. Let me just review that one. I'm going to have to demonstrate that the Day of the Lord events are not world-ending occurrences. And I'm going to have to demonstrate to you that the Day of the Lord in the New Testament is past, not future. Okay, so that's a bit of work that I'm going to have to do. We'll use the two-train model to do that. What it'll help you to do is to understand the panorama of history, the panorama of the judgments of God, and I have a feeling that we can roll some of these messages up to answering our attributes of God questions that we have delayed, like the wrath of God and the justice of God. I think we can put some of those passages together in a really wonderful way. This is a great study, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you stay with me. If you're at a place of saying, well, I believe the day of the Lord is coming tomorrow, I'm not going to listen to Al anymore, I'd like you to just stay along. You can contact me at pastor@mascot.church if you want to engage me one-on-one with this a little bit, or if you've got suggestions to help me make this study work a little bit better for you. I'm excited about this. I enjoyed this one immensely. I need to ask you a question. Are you anxious about the day of the Lord? Well, I hope you're anxious about your eternal salvation, but not fearful about an upcoming judgment. God bless you. My name is Persohn. Let's get together again on this topic in a few weeks to come.